I can do it if you want. You want me to do it?
Okay, yeah, you can do it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Objective
wait.
Opinion. Onion?
Do it again.
All right.
So I'm not doing anything stupid.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Objective Opinion. This is our first, we can call it episode 0 of our brand new podcast.
Yeah, because no one knows us yet.
Absolutely no one knows us yet. So
but deep into the future.
Yeah, so we figured we could go ahead and start off by telling you guys what we are doing this for and our first subject.
Why you should listen.
Yeah.
Why you should listen to what we have to say over what other people have to say.
I guess we forgot our disclaimer. You want to go ahead and tell them what
it is? Oh,
yeah.
Welcome back to the podcast. The only one that's smart enough to tell you that we don't know anything.
Yeah, so we're taking a little safe stance here with we're smart enough to know that we don't know anything because
aren't you just tired of the mainstream media manipulation in all of your news media? Well, welcome to Objective Opinion, the only podcast that tells you that we're biased.
Exactly. So we don't want to assume that we know what we're talking about fully.
Well, we got to tell people what we are talking about.
I guess we do. Yeah.
It's largely politically based.
It is. It's okay. So this is a political podcast. Yes.
It's a political debate style podcast.
Mm-hmm. And,
because Eliot and I here don't agree with each other on everything.
Right.
But that's what makes our friendship so deep.
Right. So I've been conservative for the past couple of years, and
I'd say for a large part of your life, since I've known you, you've always taken that stance, and I've always been more progressive, not just like liberal, but not socialist. Just you could call me a leftist if you want to really
a leftist
just grind my gears.
So yeah, I got into politics a couple of years ago, and ever since then I've taken conservative stances, and Logan here has been taking liberal stances. So we've both been able to talk to each other in long form discussions and come to pretty interesting agreements and revelations through that. So that's kind of the reason we're doing this. We want to share that with you guys, and
because the problem in fact is that within all of the political discourse online, it appears to be always so biased one way or another, or always trying to project that, you're always talking to the enemy. Like, Eliot's supposed to be my enemy if you're to go off of Facebook or any of the other, like, YouTube celebrities.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be, the savior of truth or whatever, or vice versa, when really I've come to realize that the more that I talk to Eliot, the more that I learn and the better, like, my conclusions become. And it's not just me, like, converting to conservatism or Republican or capitalism or whatever. It's more fleshing out and understanding and actually, like, reaching an agreement to where, one ideology is not better than another ideology necessarily. You can, a lot of times, you need them both. You need the balance in order to actually function. And I'm just really tired of every single entertainment platform coming across as so one-sided, myopic. Everyone knows that Fox News is conservatively biased, and everyone knows that CNN has a liberal bias, and you're not going to get the cross-pollination. Yeah, go for it.
Not only are they biased to a fault most of the time, but they don't flesh out their stories past the 5-minute mark. It's
because it's not marketable.
It's not as marketable, but we've seen for YouTube that it's become more marketable to do long form discussions.
Yeah, over time, especially people like Joe Rogan and plenty of other like radio stations that like independent news sources like the Young Turks and all that, who have like shown that hey, you can do what you want to do, and I think people know Joe Rogan to be the best one of them because he so often takes these centrist standards and he'll throw in a few debates with whoever he's talking to, but largely he's there to just facilitate a conversation with whoever he's with. Then you got people like the Rubin Report who are more like right-leaning, but Rubin tends to have an open mind about whoever he's discussing with, and it's starting to show that hopefully maybe there can be like an actual dialogue without it just being, oh, the libertards and the conservatives are trying to destroy the world.
We figured we would add on to that pile of people,
or just start a new pile where you can actually, I don't know, have conversations with the people that you disagree with and true debate.
So one thing I definitely wanted to talk about in episode 0, which I think may be one of the most important facets of the political landscape today, is that people are extremely pessimistic about everything.
Right. So case number 1 becomes for this podcast, is there a problem?
Yes.
Because otherwise, why are we doing this? And I know, like, most entertainment medias, they don't need a reason other than, oh, you wanted to. But I don't feel like Eliot and I would... My name's Logan, by the way. No, I don't know. He's Eliot, I'm Logan, but for a lot of people that sound the same. I don't think that we would be doing this at all if we didn't feel like there was a necessary need for it to have, like, an actual disagreement, but positive conversation and debate, because you just don't get that anymore. Or I feel like you don't get that,
No.
and but I also feel like it's necessary, because the first question is there a problem specifically in America at all? But if you want to put it on a global scale, I'm sure you could apply it to a global scale. Is there a problem? And I think we can both agree, and almost everyone around us can agree, yes. We're just not always going to agree on...
Which problem?
Yeah, where it comes from.
And whose fault it is, I guess.
Right. But we can still say, like, okay, if we know there's a problem and there's a reason to address it, which is what this podcast is created for.
Right. And what's funny to me is that I see a lot of people that think that these problems that they're so worried about even exist, and they don't. Like certain things, I have 2 pages of notes from this book here, Factfulness by Hans Is it Rosling? Yes, Hans Rosling. And the whole book is centered around basically misconceptions about how the world is, in terms of pessimism versus optimism. Or really pessimism versus reality.
Right.
This is just the reality. I have literally 2 pages. So if you're into feminism... I've got some okay, so Girls in School right here. This is one of his 16 Good Things Increasing. It's just 2 pages of graphs. From 1970, it was 65% worldwide. And in 2015, and that's, what's that, 45 years, it's 90%. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's just one thing that people maybe don't understand, is that, like, that's a big deal.
Things aren't awful.
Things aren't awful.
Yeah.
Things are actually getting a lot better.
But then the question becomes, Eliot, well, if you're trying to argue that things are better, then why are you guys talking at all? Which the answer becomes,
yes. So there
are problems.
There are some things that people need to take
I think the things that I'd rather talk about are the ones that I don't feel like get addressed. Because I definitely have, I have anxieties about general life, period, but... You sit around long enough, and we've had enough talks over multiple years to the point that I feel like we've kind of created between Ellie and I, a box of actual problems versus a box of not actual problems. And I feel like the real problems don't get addressed, don't get talked about, or even if they do get talked about, I think the worst part about it is it comes from a lot of people who aren't necessarily as smart or as educated as they might appear to be. And I know it takes a lot of time to, like, fact check everyone, and it's really easy to come across as educated, but I'd rather create a set of content for myself that I am actually educated and argue with someone who I feel like has dedicated themselves to also educating themselves on whatever topic that we decide to discuss, so that
one of the main reasons we're doing this is as a learning experience. It's not really to lecture. It's not to preach about what's
what I believe is.
It's more about
objective truth.
Exactly. This is my opinion. This is his opinion, and it could be wrong, for sure.
It could be wrong. But I'd rather it be wrong, and I at least actually tried to find the information behind it and put it up against someone else's perceptions than just go blindly into the night believing what I've always thought. Mm-hmm. So
that's maybe the heart of what we're talking about today, right? Like the fact that people don't seem to want to admit that they're wrong when they're wrong, or maybe even admit that they may not be right.
Right.
I mean, there's just, it seems like there's too many people that I come across that believe this thing, and it could be right, but they 100% believe that they absolutely could not be wrong in any way.
Yeah, it comes down
and
to...
they're willing to, if I may continue.
No, you can,
for
sure.
They go even to the point where they'll deny evidence against their claim completely.
Right, which is basic tribalism, and that's like a piece of human nature. I feel like we understand that. We understand that we create these us versus them narratives, but it's getting to be so us versus them in all these areas in which that doesn't necessarily need to be us versus them all the time. And political parties and all these other, thought bubbles are becoming religions. Like, it's not just like you think fiscally conservatively because you have the basis behind it. It's like, it's because your mom and dad were, and it's because you watch the news that is that way, and it's because you go to school with people that agree with you, and then you just get lost in this
echo chamber?
Yeah,
It would be an echo
exactly.
chamber, yeah.
Exactly.
I can
There's
name-
not a lot of things that are currently trying to get us outside of these echo chambers. Like, I feel like if I didn't talk to Eliot, then I would exist inside an echo chamber because most of the people that I talk to are going to agree with me, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I can attest to that. If when my more liberal friends or aren't present, I can definitely feel the pull of my bias.
Oh, yeah.
Taking me back to farther right,
Right.
not far right, but
Yeah.
back to where I was maybe a year ago or something like that.
Right.
So, what was that?
Well, actually, I realized this is black power, not white power. So, my bad.
You nailed it. So I would say that what's going on in there?
We're good.
Okay. Well, I would say that there are probably two main things that I can think of that would attribute to this sort of echo chamber mental state that a lot of people are in.
So, we've already established. So, step number 1, we've established there is a problem.
Yes.
Most of the time.
So there is at least a minor problem.
Right.
So could we maybe
I don't
discuss
think
if
it's
a
minor.
major
I
problem
think
or
it's a
minor
major.
problem?
I think it's a major problem. But obviously that's what we're here to do.
I guess I don't know. I mean, you could probably make a historical argument like people
Right.
have always been this way and it looks worse than it is. But
That's true.
we continue to move along a straight and narrow path, and
Right.
it's tedious sometimes, but maybe like it's sort of an illusion to why people act this way.
You're right,
Just
because I
continues.
acknowledge that media and market forces sort of create this illusion that we're in like the worst of times because
Yeah.
that's so, sensation is so popular. So I realize that like on a physical level, less people are in poverty, less people are dying from, certain diseases. Like on a physical level, I believe that things are better. But I also have this feeling like psychologically things are not going to be great if we continue to just ingest so much media and just ingest so much of this like negative toxic kind of ideas and propaganda.
I would say that the
creating
psychological makeup of modern America is there's a problem. There's at
Right.
least a minor problem. You could say it's a major problem.
I think if we don't change it, that it would become a major problem. And by major problem, you could definitely argue that major problem, i.e., just not how it used to be, and maybe instead we're just going to change and it's not something that we can stop. Like the technological revolution is going to so change the way that we think about and process and compartmentalize information and interact with each other that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a major change and it's different, and I don't like different, or other people don't like different, and you could make that argument pretty easily. But I don't like. I think there's substantial evidence that the way that social media and these sort of other things like
They definitely compound
Right,
what
over
maybe
time.
was already the problem.
yeah, that's true.
Like I
It's
think
already
that
the problem.
throughout history there have been people who don't want to use reason. They want to
Right.
believe in certain things for whatever reason, and then not find a way to prove them or disprove them. Just believe them.
Right.
Right. And it the weirdest thing to me is that like that person sounds like a fairy tale. Like who could really think that way? Like if I told you this fact and you just throw it out like whatever.
Right.
Is there a person like that? Yes, I can tell you
Totally.
right now that there are people like that I've met them, that I've talked to them, and it's really wild. Like it's a strange thing because, obviously it's strange
because we in our enlightenment realm take reason to be basically like the highest pinnacle. Like, and I've always thought that like intelligence was the most valued human trait, but I don't think that anymore. But it's still incredibly high on the list, and reason correlates to intelligence a lot of the time. So, reason and rationality end up being the highest pillar on the, human life totem pole. That's how you're going to get farther in life, is if the more common sense and reason that you have, the more equipped you are to deal with certain problems and all that.
Yeah.
So
I would say that if you're on a quest to flesh out your beliefs and maybe get smarter and more wise, that you should surround yourself with people that will ask you to prove what you're saying.
Yeah,
prove
exactly.
it.
That's the whole reason we're here.
And especially with people that are against you in certain aspects that ask you to prove it. But
not in a way that just is like, prove it, Like, not in a way that's just there to be contrarian and try to, like, prove that they're ignorant. Because a lot of the times, people can have a lot of information about a thing that you have absolutely no information about and that go against your beliefs, but that doesn't mean that they're ignorant for believing those things if they can back it up. It just means that, you've been proven wrong for one day.
Yeah.
But, a lot less of the dialogue is about actually, like, proving each other wrong and more about just making each other look bad. At least that's how I feel, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Yeah. So
I would agree with that. I think.
And that's why we're here, is that Elliot and I often disagree. But I don't want him to agree with me. And the reason I don't want him to agree with me is because if he did, then I wouldn't have someone to talk about, and I wouldn't have someone to spar with, and I wouldn't have someone to bring these, my new ideas and flesh them out against. And if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't be what I think of to be an intelligent person. And so the reason we're doing this in a podcast format for other people is to basically just try and prove that, like, two people can have very distinct, differing ideas and still, like, A, be friends, B, get along, and C, like, both be right or both, prove their points well without it becoming like a fight,
Yeah.
So
I mean, we've both been able to rationalize our points and for the most part throughout the years, and it's taught me a lot.
Right.
I mean, I've actually gone from, like, fully conservative to almost centrist.
Yeah.
In under a year because of
and me too. Like, exactly the same thing for me. A lot of the times, I think we both were farther away, and that's just, I mean, A, because we were young, and that's how it's going to happen. But B, we were still on totally different sides of the spectrum. And the more that I talked to Eliot, the more I was like, oh, you know what, like, these people aren't crazy.
I could give an anecdote if you want. This may really describe what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, go for it.
We were hanging out one day, and I said, just to be contrarian, I was like, do you know the gender pay gap doesn't exist? And then Logan comes in here, and he's like, what are the rich white boys saying? Like, the gender pay gap doesn't exist. Like,
not literally those words, but that's definitely how I came across. I won't lie. It was like, who do you think you are to say that the gender pay gap doesn't exist?
Exactly. And then here we are talking about.
Yeah, well, that was one of the defining moments where I was like, I went away from it, and I was like, I thought about it, and I looked up, and I read into it, and I was like, you know what? Like, instead of just shutting Elliot down 100% and being like, wow, how can you think these things? Because it's always been like that. I did my freaking reseson.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily always mean, like, oh, I'm 100% on Elliot's side now, but I'm also not like, man, like, he's just an idiot, and I
definitely went back and I was like, you know what? Maybe gender pay gap doesn't exist isn't the best way to phrase that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of
and that's how you get smarter. Yeah, and I feel like
and here we are reading.
That's why it's important to do now. Still have these conversations.
Yeah. So, let's see. What were we on about?
Well, we've determined, so step one was to determine that there is a problem.
There is a problem.
And now we have to basically prove that we're going to disagree and that we don't just circle jerk each other the whole time.
Yes. What I can say here is that the solution to the problem. This is what I think is the solution.
Okay.
Right? So, And it lies in our example of our.
You're
our
already
past.
getting pretty dicey by saying you know the solution.
I guess that's true, but
you can continue.
We both kind of lived the solution. If you
I'd
think
much
about it.
rather
So we were
try
just,
to give solutions and possible solutions.
Here's what I'll say: this is a potential solution.
Better, yes,
Right.
of many that there could
Yeah.
be.
So by encouraging discussion, right? I feel like the idea of discussion in itself, even if it's not completely productive on its first roundabout, it does bring people towards the center.
Yeah.
And the more people that are towards the center are the more it's like it seems to me like that's safer.
Right.
I mean,
I mean
feel like that's
balance
pretty
is
objective.
necessary. And we're not necessarily saying that you have to become a centrist in order to, you know,
No.
be important and be reasonable in the world, because
There's temperamental differences between people, and
Right.
that prevents people from all being. I don't want everyone to be centrist.
right,
That's not
and
fun.
we're not going to argue that the center is like this bastion of reality, because
No.
unfortunately there's this thing called the Overton window, which is like the acceptable amount of like the acceptable kind of political bias within a society.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that is like there's far left to far right, and the Overton window is like it can go from like center to right, and that's like the acceptable, you know, policies within that society. And if you start going so their center is like mid-right. So to them, centrist is mid-right.
Like the Overton window is sort of a relative thing.
Right, based on society. So, and since that's like a relative thing, you know, my expectation of what a centrist is and what his expectation of what a centrist is
Completely different.
could be totally different. And you can't just regulate that.
No.
So, but it'd be better if our societies were based on balance, and having the Overton window, you know, with a little bit of the left and a little bit of the right. That's like our mentality, or a little bit authoritarian and a little bit libertarian. Even if certain people hear the word like authoritarian and think, you know, iron fist government, and they're like, that's crazy. Well, no.
Not for all cases. That's
Right.
That's another point to bring up, is that, you know, if everyone were just a bunch of centrists, then we wouldn't have solutions to certain problems. You know,
Right.
like I would venture to guess that fiscal solutions would be better served from the Republican side or the conservative side, and more humanitarian solutions would be better served from the liberal side.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a mixture of liberals and conservatives that are rational and not polarized, they can work together on solutions for different
Right.
different aspects of the political landscape.
Right. And then,
So-
of course, you could, I mean, obviously, you know, but if you disagree with that sort of sentiment, then you can flip it and be like, well, liberals should have control of economics, and maybe conservatives can have control of, you know, civic duties because they're so traditional and all that. So, again, we're not here to say we're right.
Mm-mm.
We're here to prove that we can talk it out.
Right.
And hopefully the whole point of it is maybe to, you know, over multiple episodes to come to overall conclusions that we can then actually like produce for other people in our lives, because, you know, we'll do the research and we'll do our best to prove that we know what we're talking about and can prove our points, because I think Eliot and I have both proven to be pretty good debaters with each other because we know each other so well. But it doesn't matter to just like prove Eliot wrong if I can't, or him prove me wrong if we can't then construct like a better solution, a better alternative out of it.
And we've come to certain aspects of our conversations that have led close to a conclusion.
Right.
You know, like we don't find the solution and we don't say this is it. This is
Right.
like how we do it.
It's many hours
But we arrive at
discussion.
certain things that we can't really get past, and that's sort of a useful tool.
It's a lot better than just
Feeling around in the dark for
Right.
beliefs, basically.
or just starting like where you think it should be without proving your path. And that's why it's so interesting to have these conversations, is to prove a path to a certain point.
Yeah,
So, and I think people need that.
I agree.
So
I agree.
that's solution one, like you said.
Yeah, I would say another problem. We probably have mentioned this already, but maybe to state it more clearly is social media and the way it's set up.
Goodness gracious, yes.
Algorithm wise.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's a point that I made a long time ago. I don't want to just like talk too much because I don't want to like
You want to go ahead?
dominate
I mean,
this.
you got that. You
Okay.
brought that up to me a couple of months ago, I think.
Yes, this
So
is
that's
something
okay.
that I feel like is a big deal, and I brought it up to a couple of people, but it's the problem with how algorithms work online in social media and in YouTube and in Google, and maybe not so much Google because a lot of their links post to what's most important, but especially like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, is if you like certain topics. Let's say I like 3 liberal channels, and I exclusively watch left-leaning media. YouTube isn't created in order to expand my horizons. YouTube is created to cater to me and to get me to keep watching so that they can get more ad revenue out of it. So the problem happens when their algorithms create echo chambers for people because it's marketable. That's a term that I use often because in so often we talk about markets and like, libertarian ideas versus socialist ideas. And I do feel like a free market and capitalism, I'm not an anti-capitalist. So just if I say like that's marketable, I'm not trying to always pose that capitalism is some evil entity. It's just an idea. But what's more marketable for YouTube is to give you what you want. And if you've proven that the only thing you want is left-leaning media, then that's all it's going to give you. And it's not going to try and break you outside of your echo chamber. And if it's so much confirmation bias that rolls over time, and you're just going to get like, oh, here's the next racist video, and oh, here's how capitalism's so awful, and oh, here's what's happening in all these third world countries. And
it makes you feel like you're right. And I've experienced the same thing. So I watch a lot of political YouTube, right? And so I'll watch Jordan Peterson, and I'll watch Dave Rubin and a couple other more conservative, like Ben Shapiro and a few more conservative speakers. And then I would notice that I'd get back on YouTube the next day, and it would be just like a list and list of recommended for all kinds of conservatives, but no Bernie Sanders videos, no anything
it's
else.
already hard to have to listen to someone that you don't agree with.
It is. That's the thing.
I get it. Like, as
hard
enlightened as we can act like we are.
I'm going to be frank with you. I don't want to listen to Bernie Sanders.
Right.
I think it's important to.
I don't want to listen to Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
But, it's still, and that's a separate issue, too, is, okay, so you've created this echo chamber on these social media platforms, and if that's where the only place that you're getting, and yes, I completely understand if the only place that you're getting in your political information is from YouTube, then you probably already have a problem. Like, you're probably already doing something wrong. But I don't know if like you guys watch cable news, but it's not like it's slightly better, but everyone knows it's biased. Like left, right, center, like it's biased.
With YouTube or with
with cable news, and then with YouTube, like YouTube just doesn't have to hide that they're biased.
YouTube is, I think, a little bit right leaning, like you're saying.
Oh, well, I'm not saying YouTube the entity. I'm saying like the content creators on YouTube don't have to adhere to appearing fair and balanced.
Oh, I see.
Whereas cable news does because they're so professional.
Yeah.
So, and if the only place that you're getting your news from is from YouTube instead of cable news or books or, well-researched papers and documents and the people that actually work in the field, then, that's problem one is you're not actually looking at primary sources. But we have to realize that in the age of social media, in the age of YouTube, like a lot of people, that's where they're going to get it, especially young people like Eliot and I. Like that's where we're going to go. And it's not that there's not good information there, but
there's plenty of good information.
But better, well-researched and reputable information that isn't just biased to be marketed towards you exists outside of the platform. But people aren't going for that. Why? Because we've been taught, I think.
Oh, it's just so easy. It's so easy to be told that you're right.
Exactly.
Over and over and over again.
Right.
I mean, it's the worst feeling in the world. Here's a mentionable book. This is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. All right. So I consider this the book that killed the hyper-capitalist in it.
That was a good term.
I said it multiple times, and that's because he comes up. He factually comes to conclusions that capitalism doesn't cover for certain types of inequality. And I'm not talking about racial inequality or gender inequality. It's like between individuals. Right? So for a good example is like, hockey players, if they're born in January, February, or March, they're much more likely to be world star hockey players than people born in December, just because of the cutoff for
Applying
hockey.
for
It's
it.
January 1st. So if
Right.
you're born January 2nd, you have another full year, basically, against someone born in December to get better at hockey.
Right.
And that means that you get conscripted into a better team, and then you keep practicing up the chain, and it's a lot easier. And the same thing applies to schooling. So, like, a 10th percentile of college students more than normal are born, I think, in September, because the cutoff is August.
Mm-hmm.
If you're born in September, then you're that much smarter than someone born in July,
Mm-hmm.
right? In like 5th grade, and then you get elected into the gifted programs, and then you
Mm-hmm.
skyrocket into college. Like that's a thing. That's he comes up with the statistics for it, and
Right.
it's there,
Right.
and that's
Instead of just saying what you'll hear from someone that I would listen to maybe before is like capitalism is just evil because it doesn't watch out for the little guy without like really like even if that's a true statement, it just
it's not
just sounds, it can often just sound good,
Yeah.
like, or it can often just sound like, oh, that's right, that makes sense. And I totally know that there's plenty of people that can argue all day that capitalist is a corrupt system, but that's not really the people that you're always talking to. They don't know that. They just know someone else said that. Someone else came to those conclusions. So it's great that Malcolm Gladwell can prove, this anarcho-capitalist fantasy false.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, anarcho-capitalism can sound really fantastic and fine and dandy to certain individuals, and
I played with that idea for a long time.
right,
You know,
just to show you like how far we can come is like I'd think about communism, and Eliot can think about anarcho-capitalism. Like, I will more readily defend communism than even just libertarianism.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just like a natural predilection. Nowadays, I wouldn't do that because the more that I do the research
you've been discussing
on it,
with people, and you've been shoved towards the center.
right, exactly. So
the same thing happened to me.
right,
For sure. I guess the reason I'll go ahead and I'll reference the Ayn Rand.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. I'm sure people are gonna wonder why
bottom of it.
Atlas Shrugged is on our table.
Yeah, so I was going to use that as a hook for why there's so much negativity surrounding society. Like in
Oh,
that
yeah,
book, she
that's a
sort
good
of
point.
shoves it down the throat of the reader that everyone thinks that the world is basically going to end all the time, and it's true. Like, I mean, I'm not sure if she was choosing to prove that point or not, but it's definitely like it's a thing in the book. I mean, many characters will just come up to the main character and just talk about how everything's collapsing and all this other stuff, and it's simply not true. I mean, I know it's a fiction book, but like there's a definitely
The
references
mentality
to
has
reality.
been here for a long time, and
Yeah,
that's
that was
something
written in the 1930s,
right, and that's something I realized reading Ayn Rand and trying to understand her philosophy. Even if I intensely didn't agree with it, it was a good idea to try and at least acknowledge it and understand it to prove it wrong. So, and something I realized reading a lot of her work was the fact that a lot of the problems that exist now existed then too, and she had like the same stance on them, and such as like, okay, there was this Berkeley College had this free speech movement in like the 65. And it's so funny, like, obviously she writes like, oh, these are just crazy kids, just like they don't know what they're talking about. They're reading Albert Camus and all these other existential. There's these existential philosophers.
Oh, okay.
So from that time period, and what she was saying was like, oh, it's just these nihilist children, existentials who think they're really intelligent but don't really know, like they're causing these free speech riots. Well, nowadays you fast forward to now, and you got Mr. Jordan Peterson who argues that the postmodernists are indoctrinating children in order to extend their Marxist philosophy. And I know I'm incredibly just succinctly describing it, but reading that from Ayn Rand and reading what Jordan Peterson has to say, it's like similar. It's like, wow, like we've been thinking the same thing for a long time. And I'm not necessarily saying like that means that either of them are right or wrong. It's just we had the same mentality towards these problems for a long time. So
Yes.
it's not like we just woke up like 2 years ago because Trump was elected and everything just started falling apart. Like we've had these problems. We have history to prove it. You got to read history. You got to understand what's happened in the past to understand what's going to happen again. And people don't. Like, people just don't. Like, we don't pay attention enough to the previous iterations of these same problems that have happened.
Yeah. History, I've always thought that history was underrepresented in schools. And now I think it's more underrepresented because half of the stuff we're saying you can draw evidence from history, especially 20th century history. You know, in the 1900s, that's all politics is sort of echoing from then, right? I mean, that's what I would say.
And then you could even say how many people reference the fact that the fall of Rome has X amount of parallels to what's happening right now. Like,
yeah,
we learned that in 7th grade.
You can find plenty of parallels all throughout history about certain things that we can talk about today.
Right. So, and that's the point. Is there's a problem, and it's not. You can even argue it's not like it's a new problem. It's a very similar problem that we've had for a long time. And I don't think we're actually moving toward the same direction that we need to be going in order to handle it. And
I guess that you can finitely say that if there's never been a good cause for like Enlightenment style reason in the world, that there just needs to be.
Yeah. I
mean, like you can make the argument that this is always how it's been and
right.
Yada yada yada, but I would still reinforce my stance that like. Any person that would listen to someone talking about reason and Enlightenment thinking should be taken advantage of, you know? Like, you tell anyone you can because it's important. And it solves most problems, frankly, if everyone can understand their own biases and reason like you should. You know?
Yeah, because the idea that anyone cannot be biased is just so patently false and so disproven, and this isn't like throwing shade at you or anyone. It's a conclusion that I've come to, is we're all biased because of how we grow up and due to circumstances that none of us have control over. For example,
you can even generalize that and even more and just say that our perception isn't I guess omniscient.
Right.
Like we're not God, so obviously the things we believe to be true aren't always going to be true.
But people can hear this and be like, "Well, yeah, I know that, but like, what do you mean?" And what I mean is like, I'm not just saying there's like a platitude, like, because then if you just say like, "Oh, if we're all biased and we can't actually reach objective truth, then like, what's the point? Why talk? Why just be a nihilist?" And that's not my conclusion. Mm-hmm. It's just, for example, in certain other dialects or languages, like they don't have past tenses. I don't know exactly which one it is, but I know that in a certain other language they don't like have certain tenses, and thus they don't think about things in like a past, future, and present tense. It's only in like a present or a future tense. Mm-hmm. And you have to imagine, like, if your language doesn't include that, then your entire understanding of time.
There's all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain culture that has base 6 instead of base 10 counting system.
Yeah, exactly.
Their math is completely different, and you can talk to our friend Chase. He knows all about that stuff.
Yeah,
he's a math guy, but he'll sit there and talk to you about how certain cultures have base 6, and that everything about the way they think in terms of quantities in real life is completely different.
Right.
It's crazy.
So. But just because they're different, like, I'm not here to argue that, everyone's so different, so we can never get to the final end conclusion. I'm not so conceited to say that we can get to the final end conclusion just talking to each other, but I'm also not here to say that we're so biased and we're so, ignorant as humans that we can't get somewhere, because there's been, obviously people have anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Plenty of philosophers have come up with very intelligent critiques of, the way the universe works, and plenty of scientists have come up with plenty of obvious, technological advances.
Yes, that's one thing I'll never understand is nihilism in that respect, that humanity is doomed to be stagnant and forever just, I guess, crawling on all fours, morally and spiritually and all of these things. No. I mean, look at us. We're in a room with a bunch of cameras and lighting and microphone.
all this
none
crazy
of this was
pocket
possible.
computers.
Yeah, none of this was possible even 20 years ago.
Right.
30 or 40 years ago. Much less 100 or 200 years ago.
Right.
There's no way.
So the idea isn't just to prove that nothing really exists or all of our thoughts are just we're crazy people. No, it's to say I don't care what you think. Talk to other people about it.
Yes.
Or I do care what you think. I can't say that. It's going too far. But I still think that almost no matter what you think, you should try and talk to other people about it. And try and
about anything. If you
Right.
believe in God, then talk to an atheist.
Right.
If you don't believe in God, then talk to a theist.
Right. If you're an anti-capitalist, talk to a capitalist.
Yep.
If you're
just see.
anyone,
There's
talk
nothing
to
wrong
anyone.
with being wrong.
Right. That yeah, exactly. I think there's such a stigma around being wrong, and I don't know where it came from, and I'm sure it's natural because it feels bad to have to say like I was wrong. It's much easier to just go on the offensive at all moments.
That needs to be taught
Right.
from
Grade
birth.
school, yeah.
I mean, like I was taught not to steal as a small child. I should have been taught it's like that it's okay to be wrong. about
Right.
things.
No
But
matter how.
I was never told that. You
Right.
know, and I'm sure many people weren't. So
Right.
so I think that's a problem.
That's a poor piece of our culture.
Yes, I think that if we could culture edit, that would be one thing that I would add.
Yeah.
Definitely into the primary educations. Is that what it is? Primary. Yeah,
So
high school.
secondary
middle
is
school.
high school and primary is before that, like
Any of
elementary
it.
school.
I don't care. There needs to be a class about this stuff.
Mhm.
You know, no one. That's part of the reason we can get into something in a second that I might lead into this.
Go.
Is that when people graduate high school, they're almost blank slates,
Mhm.
value wise, right? So when they go into college, they're sort of at the mercy of however liberal or conservative the college is and the
Mhm.
professors, right? So we can probably both agree that the colleges have always been liberal,
Right. We can agree with that.
And so one concern of mine is that they're pumping out these postmodern thinkers and,
Right.
and people that
You're hearing the Jordan Peterson.
yeah
We're
yeah.
we gotta
I mean,
acknowledge,
look,
we
man,
gotta say that's
I'm in that camp.
step number one is whenever we're saying things, I'd much rather not to get onto you.
No,
But
you're fine.
But we're gonna echo the people that we've listened to. Elliot and I have both
I've
listened
adopted his belief into my belief, so I'm happy
Right.
to quote that's a thing that I learned.
I just
from
think we
Peterson.
should, because I don't want to come across as if like,
No.
oh, I've had this really original thought that
No.
these postmodernists are trying to
No.
take over, and no, it's
But-
not.
but
Like I
even-
know where it's coming from.
Sure, even before I was shown Jordan Peterson,
Right.
I did notice how people acted in high school and then how people acted in
Right.
college. It was a complete 180 degree flip.
Right.
I mean, like people's value sets changed a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that it needs to be checked at some point down the line. If there was a class in high school that sort of got you ready for the challenge of college for sort of value wise, I'd be into that.
Well, then people are gonna start being like, well, Elliot, are you gonna regulate that? Are you talking
Yeah.
about equity?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of Jordan Peterson's like college ideas, or the ideas about the postmodernists and stuff.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that the postmodernist stuff that he talks about is really a serious danger?
No.
Do you think it's a danger at all?
I mean, I think you could make a solid case that it's a danger.
Okay.
But I think he is vastly understating multiple reasons for why college kids become liberal and why they act the way they do. I mean, I could literally talk for like 5 minutes because I've thought about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I could talk for like at least 5 minutes. And I'm not asking to. I'm just saying, like, 3 solid reasons as to why that he's not stating that. I think if we're gonna actually have like a nuanced conversation about it, like you got to get over these first before you can say it's only the postmodernists.
Yeah.
So
I guess I can dial back the postmodernist talk, and I can move into the fact that there's no diversity of opinion in college, but I don't really know how to regulate
is a strong
that.
word.
Huh?
You said there's no diversity of opinion
There's
in college.
little diversity
which is-
of opinion. I got to get used to the precision that's
Yes.
required for this podcast.
Yes.
There's little diversity of opinion. Do you want to disclose where we go to school for maybe?
We live in Alabama.
Yeah, I go to the University of Alabama, and he goes to
University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Yeah, UAB, and
which is funny because sorry to interrupt you, but like Alabama obviously deep red, but then Birmingham is like a deep blue area.
That's just the way cities are. I think.
Oh, I understand. Like that's how it happens, and there you go. Another reason why it can be different, but. Tuscaloosa, which is where the University of Alabama is located, is a bit of a conservative bastion. Mm-hmm. And then the University of Alabama at Birmingham is a bit of a liberal bastion. And Eliot obviously has experience to the fact that, like, they're both going to have liberal professors.
Yes, I was about to say that even here,
right,
at as south as you can get,
right,
as red as you can get
right.
of a college, I still have been exposed to the type of opinion that Peterson talks about in certain classes, especially humanities, like he says.
Right.
It's not to the point that he proclaims it to be.
Right.
But I'm assuming
I think he's just a little bit too...
I think that he goes into...
over-focused.
That's his thing, though. He's a college professor. He's seen it. So that's my excuse.
But
I don't know.
Is he going to be looking for it is the other question.
I think that he is. Uh-oh.
Oh, is it going to shut down?
All right, folks, so our camera just died on us, and we figured since we're almost done here, we're going to finish up the podcast with just audio like a true podcast would.
Yeah, and by finish up, we'll probably end up talking for another 45 minutes because...
Who knows?
Really. I bet. Because that's how it usually ends up.
Yeah. So
that's okay. We'll make it look pretty. Here's pretty.
We took a little break, and we're back, and we've... just remind us what we were talking about.
So we were talking about how in... Professor Peterson is a very popular public figure right now, so it's really no wonder that we're going to end up referencing him. And Eliot's the kind of guy that agrees with him, and I'm the kind of guy that I don't hate him the way that media portrays that you should. I actually find a lot of what he says really interesting. I like listening to the guy, but I think specifically within his, philosophy on how colleges are being swayed so liberal as to indoctrinate children, I don't agree with that, and for good reason. But Eliot was saying that even in the deepest of red states,
yes, even in the deepest of red states such as Alabama, there's still a really left leaning staff, in place,
right.
And I don't really know the solution to imposing a better diversity of opinion in especially the humanities.
I think it's super funny that we're talking
diversity.
Not yeah. I mean, it is it's almost that's what
it's ironic.
Your side
doesn't like.
So
we always talk
lambasts.
We always talk about diversity of opinion, though. That's our little catchphrase.
Oh, is that so different? Because why are we talking about diversity of opinion? We're talking about it because there's a lot of people that don't agree with Jordan Peterson on college campuses, which. Is that a problem because Peterson doesn't like it? Or is it doesn't like it? Or is it a problem because they're truly evil? Or evil?
The people imposed
evil in
the staff?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think that even some of the postmodernist type people aren't.
Right.
I don't think that they're evil. I think that
and that's a strong word. I don't really. I'm being facetious.
You're being funny, facetious, but I would say that even their opinion is valued and valid to a point. You know, I don't want to squelch even radical thinkers. But I haven't heard any right ideas in philosophy classes and anthropology and all those humanity type classes. It's definitely. I mean, he's not wrong about the bias
in that
particular field.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with left professors. I don't mind that. But it strikes me as odd that there's such little opportunity for people.
Well, can I throw one of my nuanced perspectives on the topic here? Okay. So I think it's interesting that Peterson so often preaches hierarchies and how they are constructed naturally, and then lambasts the hierarchy that has propped itself up in college campuses, because it's not like there was a government ordinance that ever said, liberal professors are the ones that should be in charge and that's who you should take into your job and all of that. It's more just certain people with certain brain types. A lot of the time, liberals are, more often, if you're more educated, you're more liberal. Mm-hmm. That's the general stat. And I'm not gonna say like, oh, here's where it came from. That's something that I learned in government class back in like 9th grade. Yeah. So I kind of take it for granted as knowledgeable information. But if you don't know it, most of the time, if you're more well off or more higher educated, the more highly educated you are, the more likely it is that you're going to be liberal. And so, and there's like a host of other factors as to why maybe liberal people end up as teachers, more, especially in the humanities, more often than, say, conservative people.
Oh, I'd say there are definitely temperamental reasons why, but I don't know if it's scaled to the extent that they are.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? 'Cause
yeah, I know what you're saying, but like,
I've heard plenty of stories. There's this guy, Neil Ferguson. He's a historian. I cannot remember the college he was at, but he was on the Rubin Report, and he mentioned that in his staff that he was the last conservative history teacher there, and that there were certain instances where it seemed like liberal history teachers were sort of favorited or allowed in rather
how
than
a hierarchy
operates. So on that note, right, I think that if Peterson were here right now, and I don't want to sit here and just talk about what Peterson would say,
right?
But I in this case, I think
there's
agree.
plenty of people that
he talks about hierarchies all the time, but he also talks about hierarchies that go pathological,
right,
and that it's the left's job to control these hierarchies from going pathological. Right. So if a left hierarchy, like, can we assume that this is a left-ish hierarchy?
Oh yeah, that's the whole basis of my point.
Right.
Until you can prove it wrong.
Okay. So the left hierarchy went pathological, according to me.
Okay.
Right? Because there's basically, it seems to me that there's no right allowed in at this point, and there's ways that administrations do this. Right. And so he would say that it's the liberals' position to edit that and fix it, right? But if you're a biased liberal, then you wouldn't see any problem with a pathological liberal hierarchy. It would just look like a liberal hierarchy to you.
But then the burden of proof on him is to prove in what ways that is pathological. And I would also say that I think, to be my own devil's advocate, Jordan Peterson always argues for hierarchies of competence. That's his like gold standard, is creating hierarchies of competence to where the better teacher or the better doctor or the better whoever becomes the best in their field and becomes the leader in whatever. And so he would say something along the lines of, I bet that, well, just because liberals have created a hierarchy within schools does not mean that they're letting in, it's not like all the liberal professors are the best professors.
Yeah.
It's just so happens that, and then I would argue, then who's the gatekeeper to these hierarchies to prove that they're hierarchies of competence? Because I don't necessarily believe that every single hierarchy or even most hierarchies like create themselves to be hierarchies of competence. Okay, maybe most can, but when they don't, who's the gatekeeper?
Gatekeeper in what sense? Like,
who's the gatekeeper? Who determines that this is a hierarchy of pure competence still? Or
yeah, I mean that's a problem that we can basically bring up with every other problem. Right. It's like since nobody possesses the objective rational truth,
right,
that we're all sort of feeling around for that,
right,
that there's no really accurate way to gatekeep a hierarchy like you're talking about. I would just say
it makes people mad.
Makes people mad? How?
Because you have to determine that a certain person or group or ideology is the gatekeeper, and the people that disagree with that group, no matter which will always exist, who don't agree with the gatekeeping system, no matter how good it is, there will always be that conflict. I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. I'm just saying, like... Are
you thinking of, like, a singular gatekeeper? Because, gatekeeper of many hierarchies in our society is composed of two bicameral... Is it bicameral houses, I guess?
Which you should probably know what we're talking
bipartisan-
about if we're going to like sit here and talk about politics. You should
Multiple parties control a lot of.
You're correct,
the
but the way that
US.
it's working right now, it comes across as hustling your opponent out of the way so that you can pass whatever you want to pass.
Yes.
Instead of it being like a mutual agreement.
So is your argument that even that gatekeeper's hierarchy goes pathological?
Well, I mean, it can. I'm saying someone like, we don't know the objective truth, but we do the best to find out what we can, and I think we have these consciences that can tell us what it is often. But, even if you create a gatekeeper, and I could be going off on a total tangent that, like, maybe no one needs to be gatekeeping. I don't know. But I think there has to be a gatekeeper, okay? And that gatekeeper is going to be biased, again, in a certain direction, no matter how, like, good-hearted they are. And they can never do a job good enough to where no other group will say, I don't like them or I don't like the job that they're doing. Because incompetent people can claim they're competent and claim that they're being wronged by the gatekeeper. I'm not saying that's what's happening right now. I'm just saying, like, in this vacuum world, that's what's going to happen.
I would say a potential solution is to, first ask yourself, can the problem be improved and not completely fixed? And I think it can.
Yes.
And something that can improve the problem, in my opinion, and not completely fix it is a gatekeeper set.
Right.
That's elected similar to our Congress
right.
and stuff
But then you go back to Jordan Peterson basically argues against the gatekeeping of those tests that they have where to weed out bias and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's what are they called? I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah, those anti-bias classes.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about
that's
the
a form
racial bias?
Basically,
test?
yes.
Yeah.
That the certain groups of employers make you go through, especially like teaching apparently. That's a form of gatekeeping. I'm not saying it's a good form of gatekeeping. I'm just saying it's a form of gatekeeping. So basically, like, he's not arguing. I don't feel like he's arguing like to have a gatekeeping system.
He may not be. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with it.
My question becomes, and then he maybe would say, no, there doesn't need to be a gatekeeping system. Like, the people that are most competent are always going to be the ones that come to the top. And then you just turn around and be like, well, that's not happened here, where you're mad about it all the time.
I guess you could maybe think about sort of a gatekeeper that's not interested in the problem. Like okay, for example, if I want to be a history teacher at Berkeley or something like that, and they know that I'm a conservative, it's likely that the administration, like the College of, I guess, History, wouldn't allow me in my opinion, based on the way I think, right? And there's reasoning
Possibly.
and evidence possibly to why you may prove that, right? Why not give that power to somebody who's not even in the department, or somebody who's completely out of the picture,
right?
I mean, if you remove somebody who cares, then you have somebody who doesn't care, and that somebody may not. Like, if you don't care about an issue, then your bias has less of a say in it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't know exactly. I don't know. But,
right.
But
and I think that's like,
you can toss
we're
around
going
these
towards
solutions.
a better solution or a better, like, expansion of the topic. And, like, if we really want to, okay, we've gone on like a tangent for like 15 minutes about this thing, but, like, it makes sense because it's so indicative of what I believe the problem to truly be is we have a lot of people that point out these problems, like the Jordan Peterson types. And it's not enough for me to just say, Jordan Peterson's just a dumb idiot and he doesn't know what he's talking about, because I don't think that. Like, I think he has a lot of good ideas and some less structured good ideas. But it's not enough for me to just be like, oh, he's just dumb and things where we're doing it right now is perfect. We gotta engage with these people and say, okay, you've pointed out a problem. We got people pointing out problems every single fucking hour. Excuse me. We got them pointing out problems all the time, and like, you see it on news and YouTube, and it's so popular. But how many people are actually saying, like, and it's not just saying like solutions. Solutions that don't necessarily just confirm your previous bias. Like, oh, if we build a wall, that'll fix everything. No, I don't actually think that's going to fix everything. Maybe it'll fix some things temporarily, but like bigger problems actually that we're really talking about. So we got a lot of people pointing out these big issues, and not enough people, at least from what I can see, taking those issues and really looking at them in like a nuanced perspective, at least publicly. Like, they exist. I know they exist. I know there's people there, but like the people at the most popular people, I don't often feel like they're giving me like the full picture.
No.
They're just giving me the part of the picture that like makes me watch them longer.
That is another problem we could point out before we wrap this up, is the surface level arguments that people get in. You know, I was in the camp of a couple of years ago where it was about the topics you always hear about: abortion, gun control, immigration, healthcare, like just these little bubbles of topics, right? Mm-hmm. But I figured out over time that there's a sublayer under that,
right?
And we both talk about this all the time, like the fact that all of these issues sort of converge on other issues in I call it the sublayer, where that no one talks about,
mm-hmm.
at least in the mainstream media and in a lot of YouTube stuff. In YouTube, you get a lot of that still, though. You get some people talking about this sublayer. But it's funny to me that nobody wants to talk about the root of the problem. It's always the surface level. Right. So each solution, if you find a solution to the surface level problems, which is hard anyway, it's just a Band-Aid on the issue, right? Like, it's just going to grow and grow and grow, and if you don't cut it at the root, it'll just
propagate itself into a new, poisonous flower.
It's like plugging holes on a ship that's sinking or something like that. I mean, you gotta like get to the root of the problem,
right? And
no one seems to want to talk about the root of the problem,
right?
And to me, the root of the problem is like how many fathers are in the home, stuff like that. Right. You know, like what we teach our children when they're from like infants to age 5.
Right.
You know, how parents treat their children in the home and how they treat each other in the home. This all turns into stuff later.
Right.
We just don't talk about the beginning.
Right. That's not what we talk about. It's not as... So it's cool, basically.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to, like, break it down into left or right, or up and down.
It's definitely, like, it's fun in, like, a instinctual sense to see, like, here's problem A, and here's, like, left side and right side, and they're going to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we saw that thousands of years ago. Like, it's like, hey, we're in the Colosseum. Here's Gladiator A and B. They're gonna fight.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, the same.
And we thought we got over gladiatorial combat, but I don't know if you looked at the YouTube comment sections lately.
Yeah.
But it's basically that.
We're still there. I mean, it never left our brains.
Right.
So, but if you want to transcend that, you get into more multidimensional aspects of this stuff. It's not just left and right. It's also authoritarian, libertarian.
Right.
And there's solutions that are to any different problem you come up with. There's a different solution, and it's way more vast than I ever thought it was.
Which is really interesting. It's just what ends up happening is, like, if you really care about these topics and you got to do the research on them to actually truly understand what your point is, then people don't got time for that, and I understand that. Like, I understand that we don't all have time for it, but that doesn't give us a pass to just believe whatever we want and not challenge each other on it, and not truly trying to find a better solution that doesn't have to just be what I already believed. And I think that like undercuts the whole point of this. Is the problem, not the huge problem, but like the humanity problem, is the inability sometimes to reconcile with the people that you disagree with. And whether it's just being magnified due to media right now, or whether it's just being magnified due to the market, or whether it's just being magnified due to lots of other problems, it's still that, and it's still something that's probably been around for a long, long time.
It's something we can beat too.
Right.
That's what I believe. I think that if we get enough people on the train, that this can be a problem that
is solved.
That can at least be solved for a while.
Right.
I don't know if you can ever solve a problem for good in life, but it's something that you can, if you get enough people to to understand what this is, then you'll have a demographic of people that actually want to find the real solutions.
Right.
I don't believe that anybody in the media or people running for president want to find the solutions. I think that they have other things on their agenda. You know, I mean, I just don't see it, because if those people are smart, you know, they have high IQs, and we're not that smart. We don't have that high of IQ. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me that those people with their high IQs don't seem to be interested in finding real solutions, because we're sitting here talking about real solutions, you know, and we don't get that.
Right.
So I would say that's the problem.
Point.
That's the point.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
That does wrap itself up.
Yeah.
I mean, that does come full circle.
Not
pretty
bad.
well.
Not bad for episode 0.
Episode 0. Proving it every single day that we can get better.
Well, if you thought that we are dumb, then feel free to leave a comment and tell us why we're dumb, and we'll be glad to leave a comment to your comment. And
quite honestly, if you would like to, in the future, ever prove something wrong that we say, and you leave a structured comment that does it well. Or even
a video. If you want to do a reply video. I don't know exactly how that works.
If you really are crazy and you want to do that.
We're not big right now. Actually, we have 0 views at this point. So if you comment, we will definitely get back to you.
Right. And even in the future, if for some strange reason people continue to listen to us, even though we don't affirm anyone's previous biases, and you do, you know, get in contact and, you know, prove us wrong or have something constructive to say, then, or even super destructive, but, you know, in a manner that is actually like humane, we'll reply to it, or we'll talk about it, or we'll mention it in post videos.
We'll call you out and we'll destroy you.
Just I'll do my best to.
We won't actually do that.
No, I mean, I'm not making any promises. So,
well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you at episode 1.
What should episode 1 be?